Going to look at the creditors ledger. So just like we had with the debtors, each one of our debtors have their own personal debtors ledger account where we summarize only the transactions for that specific debtor. We are going to have the same thing for our creditors. So each one of our creditors will have their own creditors ledger account. And within this account, on the first day of the month, we will start with the amount that we owe to our creditors on the 1st of September because of purchases that we made prior to September that we still haven't yet paid. So account rendered brought down. Now remember that creditors are liabilities, and liabilities increase on the credit side and they decrease on the debit side. Okay, but first of all, with your transaction on the first, the one that you're bringing your balance down, it's not a new debit, it's not a new credit. It's just you recognizing the creditor's balance on the first day of September, 5,200. Okay, so that is it. And then the same for creditor number 2, where they're saying that creditor number 2, we owe them 3,200. So not a new debit, not a new credit, just a balance brought down from the previous month. There we go. Okay, right. So that's just starting with your balances. Then, like we did with the debtors ledger, we must now go and find all of our creditors transactions. So let's look here. We luckily already, we luckily already labeled them with the previous videos. So received a credit invoice from A. Binneman. That is creditor number 1. And that happened on the 6th. So we then received an invoice and renumbered that invoice to 111. So that's our first entry here. On the 6th of September, so on the 6th, invoice number 111, there we see it. So that goes into details, exactly like we did with our debtors. So invoice 111, that's just your source document. Your folio gets what is the journal in which I would have recorded this transaction, and that would have been my CJ, okay, because it's a new credit purchase. Then, if I now purchase from this creditor without making immediate payment, it means that I owe the creditor money. Therefore, this transaction does not result in a new debit, but in a new credit because my liability is now increasing. And the amount by which it is increasing is 8,910 because that is the credit invoice amount for the trading stock that I purchased. So 8,910. Okay, so that means that we started with a balance of 5,200. Then, once again, can either have a debit or credit. Either or, you can't have both. Then, in this case now, if it's a debit, it means that we owe them less money, so we will decrease the liability. But the more credits we have, the more we owe to our creditors. Our liability is now increasing, and it is now 14,110 Rand that we owe them after this new purchase. Okay. Then we also had, let me just move there. There we go. So on the 16th, it says that we now purchase from creditor number 2 for the amount of 269 Rand. So that's the next creditor's transaction there. So on the 16th, we are now creditor number 2. On the 16th, it's another invoice because we purchased without making payment. And that invoice number was then 112 because it just followed on the previous invoice number, and we didn't have any creditors transactions prior to this one. So it must be that this is the next one, 112, because the previous one was 111. Okay, credit invoices received from creditors, those are recorded in your CJ. and they result in you owing your creditor more money. So not a debit, but a credit with the amount of 269 Rand. Okay, so you take your previous balance of 3,200, add to that your new credit to get to your new balance, 3,469. Okay, then we move on. So that's not, that's CRJ, so that's not a creditor. There we have a debtor. And there in the CPJ, we issued EFT 4 to A Binneman on account 2,300. And then we said that it means that because we issued an EFT, we are paying CPJ, paying our creditor 2,300 Rand. So we're going to go to our creditor's account, and we are going to say that on the 26th, the source document is as given there, EFT number 4. So that goes into details. So details is asking me what source document did I use to record this transaction? Where did I record it? It's a payment that I made there for CPJ. I now owe my creditor less money. That's why it's a debit for my creditor's account. No credit there. Remember, only a debit or a credit. So starting with the previous balance minus 2,300 payment made brings me to my new balance of 11,810 Rand that I now owe to my creditors. And that was the last transaction. So I draw a line and I draw a line. This is now what I owe creditor number 2 that I have to pay in October. And this I owe to creditor 1 and I have to pay in October. Okay, so just the day. So in other words, the month, sorry, not the day, the month and the year. You only write that once. Then the day on which the transaction occurred. Details is the source document used to record this transaction. Folio, please name the subsidiary journal. If you owe your creditor less because of this transaction, you will debit his account. If you owe him more, you will credit his account. We do not add pluses or minuses to our ledger accounts. And that is it.